unstoppable human resolve. In the heart of the galaxy, among the stars, countless species had achieved levels of technological, philosophical, and physical advancement far beyond what any single world could fathom. The Galactic Council, a governing body composed of these races, operated under the assumption that they had seen it all. They had encountered species with unmatched intellect, races with energy manipulation capabilities that bordered on godlike, and empires so vast they stretched across star systems. But none of these species prepared them for humanity, an odd species from a relatively unremarkable planet orbiting a small, yellow star. At first, humans seemed fairly unassuming. They didn't boast the intellectual prowess of the Gentari, who had mastered quantum thinking, or the combat strategy of the Krath-Ol, who could calculate millions of tactical scenarios in mere seconds. Humans seemed, if anything, relatively average until they were pushed to their limits. It wasn't until their first encounter with the Plenari, a race that prided itself on never losing a war in over 2 millennia, that humanity's true nature became apparent. The Plenari attacked a small human exploration fleet near the edge of Plenari territory, expecting a quick and decisive victory. What they encountered instead was a species that refused to quit, no matter the circumstances. Human ships were clearly outmatched, their weapons outdated, their defenses subpar. But even as their ships were reduced to burning hulks, even as entire sections of their fleet were torn apart by superior Plenari weaponry, the humans fought on. A ship that had lost its main engines continued to drift toward the enemy, firing whatever weapons it had left. A human crew, surrounded by nothing but wreckage, manually launched torpedoes when their targeting systems were destroyed. They fought not with the cold precision of the Plenari, but with a reckless courage that the galaxy had never witnessed before. Even when the battle seemed utterly lost, the humans found ways to fight back, to survive, to continue their defiance against all odds. For the Plenari, it was a deeply unsettling experience. They were used to overwhelming their enemies with ease, yet the humans who clearly should have surrendered or fled did neither. Even in the face of complete annihilation, humanity refused to yield. It wasn't logical, it wasn't tactical. It was something far more primal. The Plenari, victorious but shaken, returned to their homeworld with troubling reports. "They don't stop," one Plenari commander had said, his voice trembling with disbelief, even when they should have died. They kept going. How do you fight that? As the stories of the battle spread across the stars, so did the growing reputation of humanity. In bars on distant worlds and among scholars in the grand halls of the Council, tales of human tenacity became legend. A species that didn't know when to quit, that didn't know the meaning of surrender, such a thing was terrifying to many of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Galactic fear and respect. The legends of humanity's resilience spread rapidly, becoming a source of both awe and concern among the races of the Galactic Council. The Gentari scholars, who had spent centuries studying the psychology of countless species, were perplexed. The Krath-Ol tacticians, famed for their ability to predict the outcome of any battle within moments, found themselves rewriting their simulations to account for the unpredictability of human behavior. To many, humans seemed to operate outside the known rules of warfare, diplomacy, and survival. They didn't behave like any other species, and that made them dangerous. The Council, which had long been a beacon of peace and unity in the galaxy, prided itself on its ability to assimilate new civilizations into its fold. New races, upon discovering the broader galaxy, were usually in awe of the Council's power and structure. They would join willingly, sharing their resources and knowledge in exchange for protection and the benefits of intergalactic trade. Peace had reigned for centuries, and many believed that conflict was a relic of the past until humanity arrived. At first, the Council saw humans as yet another species to welcome into their ranks. They were curious, a little rough around the edges, but they possessed potential. Earth was a relatively young planet by galactic standards, and its people were still learning. But as humans ventured further into space, exploring beyond their solar system, their expansionist tendencies became apparent. Humans weren't content with merely existing within the Council's framework. They wanted more. They wanted to explore every corner of the galaxy, to settle on new worlds, and sometimes to claim them by force. Diplomatic overtures from the Council were met with enthusiasm, but underlying this cooperation was a deep, intrinsic human need to push boundaries. They weren't aggressive in the traditional sense most of the time. They sought to negotiate and form alliances, but when pushed, they were willing to fight for what they wanted. And that unsettled many of the Council members. The Plenari, still nursing the wounds of their encounter with humanity, were the first to sound the alarm. Once the dominant military power in the galaxy, the Plenari now found themselves questioning everything they knew about warfare. They had assumed that their superior firepower would always ensure victory, but the humans had shown them something new: a species that fought not for conquest, but for survival, an instinctive, primal need to overcome any obstacle. The humans are not like us, said Plenari Ambassador Velcor during a closed session of the Council. They do not follow the same rules. They do not break when they are supposed to break. They don't know fear in the way we do. They push beyond the limits of logic, of reason. This makes them dangerous. They will not stop expanding. They will not stop growing. If we do not contain them now, they will become a threat greater than any we have ever faced. Velcor's words sent ripples through the Council chambers. Many of the other species respected humanity's tenacity, even admired it from a distance, but the Plenari's warning was hard to ignore. It wasn't just about military prowess, it was about something far more profound. Humanity had a drive, a hunger that no other race possessed, and that hunger could make them unstoppable if left unchecked. The debate that followed was intense. Some argued that humanity's ambition should be celebrated. They had brought new energy to the Council, a reminder that the galaxy was still full of wonders to be explored. Others, particularly those who had faced human forces firsthand, warned that humanity's unrelenting nature could lead to destabilization. Where other species respected boundaries and found balance, humans saw boundaries as challenges to be overcome. The Krath-Ol, ever the tacticians, had already begun recalculating their strategies, now factoring in the unpredictability of human action. They are not bound by logic, one Krath-Ol general had said. They don't retreat when they should. They don't calculate their odds of success based on the situation. They base it on their own belief that they will succeed, no matter the odds. But it wasn't just military minds that were unsettled. The Genthari, with their deep-rooted philosophies about peace and harmony, struggled to understand humanity's restless spirit. For centuries, they had taught that balance was the key to survival, that understanding one's place in the universe brought peace. Yet humanity seemed to thrive on chaos, constantly pushing, striving, and challenging the status quo. Among the more ancient races of the Council, a quiet sense of dread began to take root. In the past, every species that joined the Council had eventually settled into the rhythm of galactic diplomacy and cooperation. But the humans, despite their agreements and alliances, never seemed to fully settle. They kept moving, kept growing, always looking for the next frontier to conquer, whether it be a physical location or an intellectual challenge. Their adaptability was both their greatest asset and their most unpredictable trait. The question that hung in the air, unspoken but felt by all, was whether the galaxy could truly coexist with a species that knew no limits. Human defiance against control. When word reached humanity about the Galactic Council's deliberations, it was met with mixed reactions on Earth. Politicians, scientists, and military leaders all gathered to assess the implications. The Council's decision to place restrictions on human expansion was a diplomatic insult, cloaked under the guise of galactic harmony. Officially, it was framed as a safeguard for all races, meant to preserve peace and prevent aggressive, impressive imperialism. But to humans, it felt like the galaxy's elite powers were telling them, in no uncertain terms, that they were too dangerous to be trusted. So the Council's proposal involved placing limits on human military development, enforcing strict borders on colonization efforts, and requiring prior approval for any exploration beyond certain sectors of space. The reasoning was clear: humans were expanding too fast, pushing too far, and their relentless spirit posed a threat to the carefully balanced order of the galaxy. It was a political move designed to keep humanity in check, to ensure they didn't upset the established hierarchy. But humanity, being humanity, saw this as nothing less than an affront to their sovereignty. Earth's leadership knew they had two choices: accept the Council's restrictions and become another cog in the galactic machine, or push back. Historically, humanity had never responded well to being told what they could or couldn't do. The defiance was not just political, it was woven into the fabric of their existence. From the earliest days of space exploration, when humans first looked at the stars and thought, we can reach them, they had been a species driven by the desire to conquer the unknown. The challenges of deep space, hostile environments, and even their own biological limitations hadn't stopped them. So why would a bureaucratic decree from the Council? The United Earth government, after much deliberation, decided to make their stance clear: humanity would not be contained. They sent a formal message to the Council, stating their willingness to cooperate as equal partners, but they firmly rejected the restrictions on their military and exploration efforts. Humanity's place in the galaxy would not be defined by external powers. It would be shaped by their own actions, ambitions, and determination. Behind closed doors, military strategists like General Laura Chen were already preparing for the possibility of conflict. Earth's defense forces had grown significantly over the years, but they were still far from the technological marvels possessed by the more advanced species. However, human leaders understood one thing very well: technology wasn't everything. In countless battles throughout their history, humans had shown an uncanny ability to turn the tide through innovation, sheer willpower, and their infamous refusal to back down. General Chen addressed her staff, her voice calm but resolute. They think they can limit us. They think rules and borders will contain us, but we've never been the type to follow a path that's laid out for us. Every challenge we've faced, every obstacle thrown in our way, we've overcome. The Council thinks they're doing the galaxy a favor by trying to control us, but all they're doing is pushing us to prove them wrong. The rejection of the Council's terms quickly spread across Earth and the colonies. Public sentiment was mixed. Some feared that defying the Council could lead to war, or worse, isolation from the wider galactic community. However, the majority saw it as a moment to rally around a cause that had always driven their species forward: the right to carve out their own destiny. Across the globe, a sense of unity began to build, fueled by a mixture of pride, defiance, and the belief that humanity's true potential was only beginning to be realized. In the outer colonies, where the frontier spirit was strongest, humans greeted the news with elation. These were the people who had braved the unknown, settling on distant, barely hospitable worlds. They had fought to survive on planets with hostile ecosystems, building outposts and turning barren lands into thriving communities. For them, the Council's restrictions were an insult to everything they had achieved. They had claimed their place among the stars through grit and sacrifice, and no alien government was going to tell them otherwise. As the political and public spheres aligned, the decision was made to expand exploration efforts even further. Fleets were dispatched to the edges of known space, ready to chart new territories and establish human presence on as many worlds as possible. If the Council sought to limit human expansion, the only logical response was to push even harder to prove that humanity would not be confined by arbitrary boundaries set by others. Diplomatically, the situation became tense. The Council had not expected such open defiance. They had assumed that humanity, recognizing its relative youth in the galactic community, would comply with the restrictions, perhaps grumbling but ultimately falling in line. After all, many races before them had done so, seeing it as a necessary step toward integration. But the humans were different, unpredictable in a way the Council had not anticipated. Where other species might have hesitated, Fearing the wrath of the larger galactic powers, humans saw the Council's actions as nothing more than a challenge. The Plenari, still recovering from their earlier encounters with human forces, pushed for harsher measures. They argued that humanity's refusal to adhere to the Council's terms was evidence of their inherent danger. They must be contained now before they grow too strong, urged Plenari diplomats, their voices tinged with both fear and lingering resentment. If we allow them to defy us, it will set a precedent that could unravel the peace we have maintained for centuries. But the humans, true to form, continued to push forward. Instead of scaling back their military programs, they ramped them up. Secret research facilities on remote moons began developing new weapons and technologies, blending human ingenuity with the alien tech they had encountered over the years. Scientists and engineers worked day and night, driven by the understanding that the only way to ensure their freedom was to be ready for whatever the Council might throw at them. Explorers and pioneers, inspired by humanity's rebellious spirit, ventured further into uncharted space, establishing colonies on worlds the Council hadn't even considered. These colonies operated on the fringes, often in the shadow of potential conflict, but they thrived nonetheless. Each new outpost, each new discovery, was a testament to humanity's refusal to be told what they could or couldn't achieve. Plenari's ultimate regret. The Plenari had always been regarded as the epitome of galactic superiority. For centuries, their dominion over space had been unchallenged. Their civilization boasted the most advanced technology, the largest fleet, and a strategic acumen that other species could only dream of. The Plenari didn't just win wars, they prevented them before they even began, through sheer intimidation. Every race that had ever tested them had met swift and decisive defeat. And in the aftermath, the Plenari would extend an offer of peace, allowing the vanquished to join the Galactic Council under their protection. This strategy had always worked until they met humanity. The first confrontation had been humiliating enough. The Plenari had expected an easy victory, but what they encountered instead was something entirely beyond their comprehension. Humanity wasn't like the other species they had conquered. They didn't follow the rules of engagement, didn't know when to stop fighting, and didn't seem to care about their own survival in the face of overwhelming odds. The Plenari had won that battle, but the victory felt hollow, tainted by the sheer determination of a species that refused to submit. As time passed, the Plenari could not shake the unease that had taken root after that encounter. Every analysis, every report from their strategists pointed to the same conclusion: humans were not a species that could be controlled. What made them so dangerous wasn't their technology or even their growing military, it was their unpredictable nature. They didn't think the way other species did. The Plenari could calculate every possible outcome of a battle, could devise strategies that would guarantee victory against any known adversary, but they couldn't predict what humans would do next. To the Plenari, this was deeply unsettling. They had always relied on their superior intellect and strategic planning to maintain their dominance. But how do you plan for a species that doesn't follow logic? How do you prepare for an enemy that doesn't care about losing, as long as they keep fighting? As humanity's reputation spread across the galaxy, so did the Plenari's frustration. They had once been the galaxy's greatest warriors, feared and respected by all. But now, everywhere they turned, they heard stories of humans defying the odds, surviving battles they should have lost, and expanding into territories the Council had specifically prohibited. Each tale was a reminder that the Plenari's control was slipping, not because humanity had bested them in a traditional sense, but because they couldn't be broken. For the Plenari leadership, this growing sense of powerlessness was intolerable. They had always believed that they were destined to lead the galaxy, that their wisdom and strength made them natural rulers. But now, for the first time in millennia, they were faced with a challenge they couldn't solve with brute force or diplomacy. Humanity had changed the rules of the game, and the Plenari had no idea how to respond. The more the Plenari analyzed their past encounters with humans, the more they realized the true scope of their mistake. In their arrogance, they had assumed that humanity would be just another species to bring under control. They had expected to win a few decisive battles, impose their will, and move on. But instead, their initial victory had only ignited humanity's resolve. The humans had learned from every encounter, adapting quickly, using their defeats to grow stronger. Even worse, the Plenari realized that their own strength was being undermined. In the past, their reputation alone had been enough to quell any potential rebellion or resistance. But after facing humanity, other races began to question whether the Plenari were truly as invincible as they claimed. The stories of human defiance inspired others, and whispers of rebellion began to spread in the outer systems. Races that had long bowed to the Plenari out of fear now wondered if they too could stand up against their oppressors. The Plenari had never anticipated this. They had believed their strength was eternal, their dominance unquestionable. But now, with each new human colony that defied council mandates, with each new victory won by sheer force of will, the Plenari's grip on the galaxy loosened, and they could do nothing to stop it. Attempts to escalate their military pressure on humanity were met with fierce resistance. Where other species would have backed down in the face of Plenari might, humanity only pushed harder. When the Plenari launched covert operations to sabotage human expansion efforts, they found themselves outmaneuvered by human spies and diplomats who had grown adept at using every tactic in the book and then inventing new ones on the fly. The Plenari's pride was deeply wounded. How could a species so young, so primitive in their eyes, be so effective at resisting everything that had kept the galaxy in check for millennia? Humanity's ability to turn a disadvantage into an opportunity was something no Plenari strategist could fully comprehend. The humans' adaptability, their willingness to sacrifice, and their refusal to accept defeat made them a unique and dangerous enemy. For the first time in living memory, the Plenari were not just fighting a war, they were facing the possibility of losing control of the galaxy altogether. Their efforts to limit humanity had backfired spectacularly. Every measure they took only strengthened humanity's resolve, drawing the human race closer together in the face of a common enemy. The more the Plenari tried to contain them, the more humanity grew, expanding beyond the limits the Council had tried to impose. So real danger, the Plenari realized too late, wasn't that humanity would defeat them in battle. It was that humanity had already won the war of ideas. The Plenari's rule had always been based on fear of their power, fear of what they could do to anyone who defied them. But humans were not afraid. That lack of fear spread to other races who began to look at the Plenari, not as unstoppable overlords, but as a force that could be challenged. The Plenari, for all their technological and military superiority, had underestimated the one thing that made humans truly exceptional, their relentless spirit. Where others saw insurmountable odds, humans saw a challenge. Where other species might accept limitations, humans saw an opportunity to prove their worth. In trying to contain humanity, the Plenari had only unleashed something far more dangerous, an idea that could not be defeated with weapons or strategy. In a galaxy dominated by advanced civilizations, humanity emerges as an unpredictable force, defying the expectations of the Galactic Council. Initially seen as a lesser race, humans shock the galaxy with their relentless willpower, fighting against superior species like the Plenari and refusing to yield even in the face of overwhelming odds. The Council, alarmed by humanity's rapid expansion and indomitable spirit, imposes restrictions on their military and exploration efforts to prevent destabilization. However, humans reject these limits, driven by an innate need to explore, survive, and control their own destiny. As humanity continues to expand and develop new technologies in secret, the Plenari, still reeling from their initial encounters, push for stricter measures to contain them. The Plenari's arrogance, once the cornerstone of their dominance, becomes their downfall. They underestimate humanity's adaptability and unity in defiance, sparking the new wave of resistance across the galaxy. Other races, inspired by humanity's fearlessness, begin to question the long-standing order enforced by the Plenari and the Council. In the end, the Plenari and the Galactic Council find themselves facing not just a military challenge, but a war of ideas. Humanity, unwilling to be controlled, becomes a symbol of freedom and defiance, shifting the balance of power in the galaxy. The Plenari's greatest regret is their failure to see that humanity's true strength lies not in their technology, but in their unbreakable spirit, a force that no galactic power could ever truly contain.